Good evening, members. I'm Councillor Rob Field, Chairman of Audit, Governance and Standards Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the meeting this evening. Before we commence proceedings, may I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm sounds, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building should it be necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know? I ask not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members and any members of the public are aware that that's taking place. I'd also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by way of their microphones and to remind them to turn their microphone off when they're finished speaking. Finally, to welcome Councillor Thompson to his first meeting as a member of the committee. Welcome aboard. So, item number 1, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Burke, Councillor Cooch, Councillor Khadkar, Councillor Summersgill offered apologies as Cabinet Member for Corporate Resources, and also Councillor Titchener, one of our two Parish Council representatives. Are there any other apologies for absence? Thank you. Item 2 is notification of substitute members. I know Councillor English, you'll be subbing for Councillor Khadkar?
I am indeed.
Thank you. Are there any other substitute members? None this evening, thank you. Urgent items is item number 3. There are no urgent items this evening. Item number 4 is visiting members, and we have no visiting members in the room. Item number 5, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members and officers? Thank you. Item 6, disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? Thank you. Item 7, to consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 8 is the minutes of the meeting on September 29th. Are members happy they've had time to read the minutes? I'd like to move that the minutes of the meeting held on 29th of September 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Evening, Councillor Fort. I just need to ask. That's quite all right, don't worry. I just need to ask if you have any disclosures to make. Okay, thank you so much. Item 9 is the question and answer session for local residents. I have received notification that Mr. David Wyndham wishes to ask a question of me as chairman. Unfortunately, Mr. Wyndham is unable to present the question in person this evening. I have agreed to read out the question and answer. So, the question is as follows. My Code of Conduct complaint reference M021238, submitted on 10th of September 2025, was handled in breach of the Council's adopted procedure, which requires a decision within 20 working days. The monitoring officer's decision, issued almost a month after that deadline, failed to engage with the key evidence of apparent bias I provided, creating material governance and legal risk for the Council. Given this committee's statutory responsibility for ethical standards and good governance, what action will it take to review this procedural failure and ensure compliance with the Council's adopted Code of Conduct framework? So, I'd like to start by putting on public record apologies on behalf of the Council that the procedural timescales on this occasion weren't met. I have met with officers and discussed the case. It is for the monitoring officer to determine these matters, not the committee, but in any event, I am assured that the correct considerations have been taken into account. Mr. Wyndham, had he been able to attend, would have been afforded the opportunity for a supplementary, but as he was not able to, we'll be moving on.
Sorry, are we saying we did comply with the timelines and everything, or we didn't?
Sorry for the confusion. We did not meet our internal policy on this occasion. Hence, my apology for missing the deadline. This isn't really a matter for discussion.
It's just that normally when someone doesn't attend in this situation, we just send them a note saying what the answer to the question was, and you didn't refer to that, so I just clarifying.
I'll ask Democratic Services to send a note in addition to the published minutes. Thank you. I do want to draw that item to a close. So, moving on to item number 10, there are no questions from members to me as chairman this evening, which takes us to item 11, which is the committee work programme for 25-26, which you'll find on page 12 of your papers. Are there any comments on the committee work programme as presented in the papers? Yes, thanks, Debbie. So just to draw attention to the fact that the mid-year information governance report will now be presented in March 2026 and not at the January meeting. Were there any? Councillor Cooley.
I note that the Code of Conduct Matters 6-month update is a March meeting. Could we have a report, please, on the background to this question and why the 20 days was missed?
The 20 days was missed because of workload. There's no greater explanation than that.
Okay.
I have, as I say, have discussed that matter in detail with the officers concerned. So, is the committee work programme noted? Thank you. Item 12 is the annual governance statement mid-year update, which you will find on page 14 of your papers. I call upon Angela Woodhouse, Director of Strategy, Insight and Governance, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides members with a progress report on the action plan created as part of the 2024-25 annual governance statement, which this committee considered in July. A number of actions were identified and have been progressed, including we have held a workshop on ensuring environmental, economic and social benefits are considered in decision making with senior managers and the Cabinet, and as a result our report templates will be updated and our processes, and that will come through in the next year. We've also undertaken additional overview and scrutiny training, so we consulted with the Chair to see what would be appropriate, and that training has happened and it's been focused on questioning skills. And we are also underway with our new communication and community engagement strategy. As well as that, we have delivered against the corporate strategy, and we have reported on progress to PAC and Cabinet, with those reports going through committee at the moment, so it's going through in November, and they're showing progress against the Year 1 action plan. Work to improve modern.gov, which I know has been discussed previously at this committee, which is the system where we store and manage committee agendas and decisions, will be undertaken when we move the system to the cloud. So that is planned for next year, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I'll open to questions from members of the committee. Councillor Greenham.
Not so much a question, just wanted to give some feedback on the new comms strategy. It's been really good to see the social media work that the team have been doing. They put up some really engaging posts, and it is totally about pride in the borough, and it's lovely to see residents engaging with those posts, and they've tried sort of different approaches trying to get people engaged, and I think it's created sort of really positive presence for Maidstone Borough Council on social media.
Councillor Cooling, I believe you indicated.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. The second item on the table, modern.gov. Two questions. Firstly, is it restricted to just the agenda, or does it include papers as well? And secondly, will those who are not privileged to be members or officers still receive paper versions? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeling. This is what we discussed. So any member who requests a paper copy of agendas can have those, and that is enshrined in the law. So councillors can request paper copies, and we will still provide paper copies to those members who request it, and we keep a list of that which we update regularly, and we do make it available as well to public and others attending meetings. If you have any issues though, I'm happy to have a look into it.
May I ask, I assume that people such as myself do not have access to modern.gov, or is that something I don't understand? Thank you.
Apologies, you do have access, so it's publicly available. The only things you wouldn't be able to access on there is if there are part 2, so exempt items. Everything else, it's all publicly available. We're trying to make it more user friendly. That's really what it's about. If for those of you who do use Modern, and it's a system under me and I don't particularly enjoy using it, I think it could be improved, so we're looking at making it better, hopefully for members and officers. So yes, publicly available.
Just to clarify, essentially when you go to the Maidstone Borough Council website and you select the Council and Democracy section, that acts as a portal to the modern.gov site. So it is, as described, accessible to all members of the public.
That is very helpful. I'm a great user of the Maidstone Borough Council website, all aspects of it. This seemed to have an implication.
Councillor English, I believe you indicated.
Thank you. This is a very positive report, and rightly so, I think. To follow on from Councillor Grennan's comment on communications and the press media work that's been done, it's been a real step change, and Peter Cooper was always very good, but some of the new people, the new officers we got in the team have been doing some truly impressive work over the last few weeks and months. Don't think we've been on CNN for a while, or on German radio, but we managed to achieve both in the last few weeks. However, there is one slight issue, and the issue shows up with training as well. A reluctance on the part of considerable numbers of some borough councillors have got very involved with this, and we need process. Others have been quite reluctant, and I think we possibly need to flag up a bit more that the press communications team do not work for the administration, they work for the council as a whole, and access to the communication team's skills is available, provided it's not partisan, to councillors across the board who want to publicise particular initiatives in their locality. So hopefully we can do a bit more to flag that up. And similarly on training, year after year there's a reluctance from councillors to ask to go on training courses, which are available out there. So I think we need to do a little bit more to actually encourage people to stop being so bashful, because there's no point having access to training courses if people just don't apply to go on them. So I think we as a council need to flag up as part of this document that opportunities do exist, and it's up to members to take them.
Thanks, Councillor English. I'm sure members of this committee can take that back to their respective group meetings, and that's probably the most appropriate place to encourage colleagues to take those opportunities. For my part, I just wanted to say it is very good to see the progress that's being made on all of the items covered. We don't seem to have any gaps, and it's a very thorough explanation of the work being undertaken, so thank you. So this report, members, is for noting. If we're happy, I'd like to move from the chair that we move per the recommendation on the papers to note, seconded by Councillor English. Is that agreed? Thank you. So that moves us on to item 13, which is the Internal Audit and Assurance Progress Report on page 24 of your papers. I call upon Catherine Woodward, Head of Mid-Kent Audit Partnership, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So agenda item 13 on pages 24 to 36 of your agenda pack outlines the Internal Audit Progress Report for 25-26. So the main areas that I want to run through today are the audit progress on delivering the plan and the follow-up work that we've completed so far this year. So you can see from pages 30 of your agenda pack the progress up to October on delivery of the audit plan. And as you can see, there is a significant amount of work that is currently underway. So when the plan was constructed, it was agreed that the essential and high priority audits would be the main focus, and that medium priority audits will be delivered within the remaining resources, ensuring that a sufficient breadth of coverage to provide a balanced audit opinion could be achieved. So with the work that has been allocated already, this will provide the minimum amount of work that we need to deliver an annual audit opinion. There is one additional audit which has been agreed, which is not on this report, that will be completed, and that is an audit of the waste contract. So both of our partners, Ashford and Swale, have requested this audit on their plan as well. So that one is one that we are currently working on as well. So that will be completed in addition to the work that's on this plan. So the next area that I want to cover off is the update of management actions, which you can find on page 33. So these tables identify that there are 58 actions that are in progress that span a few years. What I have provided for you is further insight into those oldest actions and when they will be completed for your information. And page 34 of the agenda pack onwards provides executive summaries of completed audit work so far. On the safeguarding audit, there was one high-risk action that was raised relating to the logging of safeguarding referrals. So this is the process where they refer a safeguarding concern to the county council. A change in process has been implemented, and we will need to allow sufficient time for this to bed in, and we will test this in the next few months. So that's why it's still outstanding. So I'm happy to take any questions if members have any for me.
Mr. Dobbs.
Thank you, Chair. Not intended as a criticism at all, but you acknowledge in this report that progress has been slow, and I think there's 3 audits completed. Is there any specific reason for that you would want to highlight to us? And given that rate of completion, how confident are you that by the time we get to the end of the year, you'll have completed that sufficient quantum of work to deliver your opinion comfortably? Thank you.
So yes, I did sort of touch upon it within the report. So we have had some vacancies, which has been a significant issue in resourcing that we've had within the team, and we have moved to I'm calling it a blended approach to audit delivery, where we are using contractors. They are local authority based contractors, and we went out to tender for those earlier in the year. We didn't appoint our contractors until July, and they only commenced work for us in September, which is one of the reasons that the delivery of our plan is behind where we currently would have hoped to have been. However, I will point out we are further ahead than we were at this point last year, so I'm taking small crumbs of comfort from that. But the work that we are doing with our contractors, I'm very confident that we will deliver sufficient work, which is one of the reasons that I put in here when we're expecting those completed dates for all of that audit work that we've got allocated so far. And with that work, that will provide me sufficient breadth to sign off an annual audit opinion. But obviously, we would like to ensure that we can deliver a couple more but that's one of the things that we did try to make sure that our plan could be dynamic as well to respond to changes in priorities such as LGR, which is obviously a hot topic at the moment.
Thank you, that's very reassuring. Thank you, Catherine.
Councillor Cooling. Yes, go ahead.
Couple of excellent report as usual, may I say. A couple of pedantic points, and no need to respond, but on page 33, I don't think the numbers add up and across, if you follow me. That's a pedantic point. On page 34, there are three low ones. I can't see them in the report, but again, a pedantic point. And on page 35, another third pedantic point, it refers to, in the second paragraph, 2 medium priority areas, whereas there are 3 in the column. They're pedantic. The substantive comment I'd like to pass is on page 36. Right at the bottom, however, we did see cases where deadline extensions, etc., 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 etc. I just wish to recount the experience of a neighbouring borough, dear to the heart of Thiessen, which recently incurred, I think it was either 300,000 or 330,000 penalty from the planning inspectorate because they had not adhered strictly to procedures relevant to major planning applications. As a result, the senior planner, Eleanor, no names, the senior planner tightened up procedures and tightened up checks to make sure that officers within that borough were not at risk of incurring for that borough another major fine. The reason I say this now is that allegedly we haven't got a 5-year housing supply, though I could comment on that, and therefore it's absolutely critical that if we're going to resist as a borough unwelcome applications, particularly major applications, we must be absolutely tight procedurally in terms of how we handle these planning applications. So it's an observation which I hope finds its way back. A neighbouring borough cost 300, lost 300, or maybe in 350k. We do not want that to happen, do we, in Maidstone? So we need to make sure we're absolutely rigorously tight on handling, particularly major planning applications. Thank you.
Thank you for your observation. Did you wish to come back? Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee or comments? Again, I think from my perspective, just to say that it's encouraging in the context of the resources that we have to see that progress is being made, and actually that the assurances that we're getting are very robust. So thank you for that. The report is for information only, so I will move from the chair that the report is accepted as presented. Could I have that seconder, please? Councillor Trubinski. And is that agreed, members? Thank you very much. So that takes us to item 14, which is the Treasury Management Mid-Year Review for 25-26, which you'll find on page 37 of your papers. I call upon John Owen, Finance Manager, to introduce the report. Evening, John.
Thank you, Chair. The SIPFA Prudential Code requires the Council to produce a mid-year and annual report on its Treasury management activities. The Treasury management function is also reported quarterly through the budget monitoring reports. This report outlines the Treasury management function to the 30th of September 2025. The Council agreed the strategy for the year on 19th of February 2025, which states investments are to be kept short-term to be available to fund the capital programme when needed. All investments have been held in money market funds, call accounts, also short-dated deposits with other local authorities during the year. The investment balance as at the 30th of September was 30.05 million. Details of the investments can be found in Appendix A. Investment income received to date is £940,000 with an average rate of 4.59%. There is a risk of bank rate is going to fall steadily throughout the year, so this rate may reduce. The council has £65 million of long-term loan debt with PWLB and Aviva Life and Pensions, which could also be found in Appendix A. The council has committed a further 20 million, which will be received in February 2026. However, with a capital programme forecasting to be around 230 million over the next 5 years, further borrowing will be required, either through PWLB or through the markets. No further borrowing is expected to be needed this year, except what has already been committed. The Prudential and Treasury indicators in Appendix B compares the revised estimates against the original and last year's actuals. It is anticipated that the capital programme spend will reduce from an estimate of £46 million to a revised estimate of £41 million, which therefore has decreased the other indicators in the appendix. No indicator was actually breached during the first 6 months of the year. So that's it for me. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor English.
It's not specifically a question. It's an observation that to an extent, given where we are with local government, some of this will be impacted, shall we say, by where we end up going. But of course, in the meantime, we have to assume that we carry on as is. So, in case anyone was wondering why we're talking about 5 years from now. But in terms of an assessment of market conditions and the actions required or not required, it seems, as usual, a very competent stab, allowing for the external environment which we can't control.
Thank you, Councillor English. Mr. Dobbs, I believe you indicated.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a very small number of comments. I actually thought it's an excellent report overall, so thank you for that. There's a reference to MUFG. Is that Link Asset Services as was? Okay, thank you. Thank you, yeah, okay. On page 41, paragraph 2.9.2, we refer to investment income of 940k. How does that compare to what we budgeted for that income line?
We are above budget this year, so it's because I think we sort of budgeted that rates would come down a bit quicker during the year, but I think the Bank of England have made it clear that it's actually going to be slower than what was first anticipated, mostly around inflation being as sticky as it is at the moment.
And on page 44, we have the balance of investments and borrowings, which is fine. I think what would have been useful for me would have been to see, and perhaps you can consider this in the future, would be see that balance as it shifted over time, so possibly year by year. Because what I don't get from a sense of this is what the trajectory of investments and borrowing is over the last 5 years, 10 years, etc. And the only other comment was, and perhaps this comes in the year-end report, there isn't a liquidity indicator in here. Is that something that comes when you do the final year-end report?
Yes, that will be, yeah.
Councillor Cooley.
Apologies, I didn't quite catch your comment about MUFG corporate markets, which I do not know. I've looked at it quickly on the web and it doesn't instill great confidence in me, so why have we switched to that?
MUFG have actually taken over Link. It's the new New branding for them. Yeah.
And it may be another one of my pedantic ones, but on page 45, right in the middle, actual external debt is put at 85 million. Is that the debt at the end of this financial year, or is it at this point of time where I guess it's 65? Thank you.
Yes, it's 65 currently, but we have committed to that extra 20 million with Aviva, so that makes up to 85 for the end of the year. Yeah.
If I may, to Mark, the interest rate projections are not particularly encouraging, are they, in the face of a large capital programme? But I think you've given the assurance before that project appraisal criteria have now been updated to take on board this sort of level of interest rate. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Yes, we've increased the hurdle rate for new investments.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Barwick.
Just like to comment on from Councillor English's comment, because I was thinking that. Is there a plan B regarding the local government reorganisation, or is it, at the moment, like everything, a wing and a prayer and no one knows what's happening?
I'm not sure I'd describe it as a wing and a prayer and no one knows what's happening. I think both at this committee and in other committees of the council, it's been reiterated by senior officers and by cabinet members that Maidstone Borough Council will continue to exercise its duties and functions as it goes through the local government review process. So from an audit and governance and standards perspective, the papers will always explain the world as it is. And as it is today, we are Maidstone Borough Council. There is no alternative statutory authority to conduct our duties and services, and that is what's laid out before us. As the process progresses, I think it might be one of those processes that moves very slowly until it moves very fast. But at the moment, that's where it is. I hope that's some reassurance. Come in.
Yeah, just a couple of comments really in terms of if you think about what's in the capital programme where we're trying to spend our money, goes through obviously the political process, but my view is it's not really changed in terms of what we're trying to do in terms of the quality homes, where the big spend is. A lot of that actually becomes part of something called a housing revenue account. You may have heard us talking about that longer term. So that hopefully becomes self-financing as well. So you might be borrowing, you might see large numbers, but it's a bit like your home mortgage and stuff. You've got to afford to be able to repay it, and that's part of the legislation that's going to put it in there as well. So we'll be looking at that to make sure it's long-term is affordable.
Thank you, Adrian. That's helpful context. Councillor Cooling, you wanted to ask something?
Yes. A final question, perhaps of Mark. As the hurdle rate has changed...
I'm sorry, Councillor Cooling, your microphone hasn't come on. Now, watching public will be ignorant of what you're asking.
It was on just now. I'll put it that way, you can see it then. Sorry. As the hurdle rate has changed, presumably reasonably significantly over the past couple of years, have any significant projects been set aside? Have any significant projects been pulled as a result of this new hurdle rate?
No, they haven't. The decisions that we've made over the past year or so have been about site acquisitions, and we've been given the higher hurdle rate limited in what we've taken on in terms of new sites for the pipeline of housing, but it hasn't meant that we've stopped the rollout of development on existing sites that we've already purchased.
I don't think there are any further questions or comments. So, per the papers, There are two items for our consideration. The first is to note the Treasury Management Strategy position as at 30th of September 2025. I'd like to move that that is noted. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor English. Is that agreed, members? Secondly, it is an item for decision that no amendments to the current procedures are necessary as a result of the review of the activities of 25-26. I think from the debate tonight that no one has indicated any dissatisfaction with procedures, so I would like to move from the chair that we make no amendments per the papers. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Drabinsky, thank you. Is that agreed, members? Thank you ever so much. That takes us to item 15, which is the Budget Strategy Risk Assessment Update. You will find the details starting on page 46 of your papers. I call upon Mark Green, Director of Finance and Resources, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the usual report that I bring on budget risks, and I must start with an apology because I undertook at the last meeting to set out the risks both as unmitigated risks and mitigated risks. I haven't done that, but I will for the next iteration of the report. So far as the content of the report is concerned, this year we're on course to stay within the revenue budget. As at the end of Q1, we're just about to report on Q2. We're looking at a break-even position. At the moment, it looks as though we should do a bit better than that. Two main factors there. One, which has already been alluded to, is the fact we're doing better on interest income than we had budgeted. Offset against that is an overspend on temporary accommodation, but that's actually going in the right direction now because numbers in temporary accommodation have stabilised and a high proportion of them are now being accommodated in the council's own housing, so we're not having to pay the very high rates for nightly paid accommodation that we were. So as far as the revenue budget is concerned, that's all looking positive. On the capital side, again, it's already been alluded to the fact that there's been some slippage in the capital programme this year, but we're still on course to deliver the main schemes within the programme. Of course, it's not just a one-year programme, it's a 5-year programme. Looking further ahead, I highlight a couple of things. One is the fair funding review that the government will be implementing in 26-27. We still don't know exactly how that will impact Maidstone. We're expecting the local government finance settlement to come out in December, probably late December, just before Christmas. I think the overall size of the local government spending pot will depend on what happens in the Chancellor's budget. The local government finance settlement follows on from the Chancellor's budget, but we'll have to wait and see what the impact is for us. And the other big risk area is to do with local government reorganisation. What this report does is flag up the risk to Maidstone Council, and those risks are about staff retention, loss of focus because management are having to deal with all the issues to do with local government reorganisation. That's addressed in the risk register. There's another set of risks for Maidstone as a community with local government reorganisation, and the report talks about these to an extent. With a single tier of local government, the unitary authorities would be facing all the challenges that Kent County Council and Medway face at the moment with rapidly rising expenditure on social services. Local government reorganisation itself won't resolve those issues, and also local government reorganisation in Kent will be on a bigger scale than has happened anywhere else in recent history. You've got 14 authorities going into the mix, anywhere between 1 and 5 new authorities being formed. So it will be a complex process which will involve a huge amount of management time. There may ultimately be savings, but they won't arrive for at least a year or two, I don't imagine. And the final point is the level of debt that the new unitaries will take on. Fortunately, Kent isn't in the same position as Surrey, which had to have 500,000 of its, so 500 million of its debt written off by the government. Kent authorities generally aren't as indebted as the ones in Surrey, but that is still an issue potentially that will have to be dealt with as part of local government reorganisation. So I'll leave it at that, but I'm happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions from members? Councillor English.
I suppose a judgment on the community issues has to be made, because some of the mitigation for potentially having a more remote unitary authority, which has been mentioned, are essentially capital P political decisions, or at least community decisions, because there are mitigations potentially for that, but that depends on the community governance review, so we don't know what the outcome that is, so we can't put it in the report at the moment. But clearly, once we do know that, the report could possibly be updated in that section to take on board that potential mitigation. Similarly, this was written, and it always seems to get later every year when we know what the local government finance settlement is. So in a way, we're sort of in the dark. What we do know is the fair funding settlement's unlikely to be good news. And probably not much fair about it. There has been some good news. I don't know whether members are aware that in terms of the government funding for plastic from producers, from dealing with the packaging, looks like we are going to get significant funding coming in from that, and potentially as much as 2.7 million in the second year. But that's ring fence, so what the council will have to do in order to mitigate the impact on our services is basically some reallocation of resources from the general funding which would go towards that particular service, and the fund which would be funded by that ring fence grant, and then we would end up reallocating some of the general funds to elsewhere. So I think it's interesting potential areas that we could add to this report, and it might need to come back once we're well, it will need to come back once we're in a position to add certain sections to it, so we've got a more informed approach going forward. That may well have been the plan anyway.
You're absolutely correct, Councillor English. Fair funding review and the extended producer responsibility grants are things that I can pick up in the next report when we know more about them.
I would add as well that, as Mark has described, the report going forward will account for the existing mitigations and their impact on the raw risk, which I think will help to contextualise it a little better. Local government review is a bit of a movable feast, and I think some of the issues that you described there really will come down to cabinet decision around budgeting and putting the budget before full council, etc. So I would expect that to develop as things become clearer over the fiscal year. Were there any other questions, Councillor Cooling?
Two, but the first one is page 49, paragraph 210. This is the subsidy required for the social housing, which I'm certainly not against social housing. But Mark, what is your instinct on the trajectory of this risk of not being able to afford the subsidy? Is it a stable level of risk, or reducing, or heightening? Thank you.
I would say it's stable. Just a bit of context with this. We've been putting money aside for the past 3 or 4 years, in the current year around 4 million to the Housing Investment Fund, which means that we can transfer housing into a housing revenue account, and we can be confident that the housing revenue account won't run out of money, and with a housing revenue account, you can't run a deficit, so we have to make sure it's properly funded. We're still probably 7 or 8 million away from where we need to be in terms of the subsidy, given the current commitments to new homes that the council has got. So we do look with interest to see what comes out of the finance settlement, whether we'll be able to put in as much money again in 26, 27 as we were last year. But another 2 chunks of 4 million would get us there. But it does depend on how the settlement plays out for us.
The second one is page 51, 217, third bullet. I preface this by saying that I'm not convinced that unitaries will actually happen, but as I think Clive has pointed out, it's a heavy political decision. And certainly the presentation that parishes saw earlier today, which gave the various scenarios, except the first one, which is all of Kent in one unitary, the payback periods were, I think, at best 5 to 7 years. And in the private sector, that would be a very unlikely project to go ahead in uncertain economic times. But anyway, that's an aside. The question is the complexity of unravelling existing shared service arrangements. I think most of our arrangements, correct me if I'm wrong, are with the probable unitary that Maidstone might be part of, i.e. Sevenoaks, Tunbridge Wells, Tunbridge. Are there any shared service arrangements which would need to be unravelled out with that group of 4 boroughs? Thank you.
There would be, because quite a few of the shared services are 3-way shared services between Tunbridge Wells, Maidstone and Swale, and on most of the proposals we would be in a separate unitary from Swale, so that would need to be unravelled. I suspect it's not something that would happen on day 1 of the new unitaries, which we think may be 1st of April 2028. It will take time, but that's just part of the complexity of setting up the new arrangements that we face.
Follow on, if those shared service arrangements are formalised contractually, including Swale, is the borough likely to review whether or not that contract, that arrangement should be renewed if the renewal comes up in the next year or 2?
I may bring in Cathy here because I know she's done a review of the agreements, but I think there's enough flexibility in the agreements to allow us to terminate them if necessary. I don't know whether you want.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Most of the arrangements we have with Mid-Kent Services are using a collaboration agreement, a memorandum of understanding, rather than a full-on contract in that sense. So there are termination clauses included within all of those, which would allow for us to be able to do something, obviously, depending on what happens to each of the organisations. I think there are a few more contracts as well with various other departments as well that fall outside of Mid-Kent Services that will also need to be looked at. So as part of LGR, it's a very important topic that we're all, obviously I'm a 4-way partnership, so it impacts, but yeah, the collaboration agreements do have weight behind them and are currently being reviewed.
Are there any other questions on this item? The item is for noting, so I'll move from chair to accept the report as is. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Greenan, thank you. Well, in which case I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.